My name is Amanda Foster. I am 4 or 5 years old, and I used to think I had the perfect life. I lived in a beautiful house with a white picket fence. I drove a nice car. I had 2 wonderful children, Emma and Jake. And I had a husband named Richard who I thought loved me. For 15 years, I believed our marriage was strong. Richard worked as a lawyer at a fancy downtown firm. I stayed home and raised our children, managed our household, and supported Richard's career. I thought we were a team. I was so wrong. It started 6 months ago with small things. Richard would come home late, smelling like expensive perfume that wasn't mine. He started password protecting his phone. He became distant and cold. "You're imagining things," he would say when I asked him about it. "I'm just stressed with work. Stop being paranoid, Amanda." But I wasn't imagining things. A wife knows when something is wrong. I could feel it in my bones, in my heart. Something had changed. One night, I found a receipt in his jacket pocket. It was from an expensive jewelry store, a diamond necklace that cost $5,000. I never received that necklace. My heart sank as I realized the truth. Richard was having an affair. I confronted him that night, holding the receipt in my shaking hand. "Who is she?" I demanded. Richard's face turned red, then white. For a moment, I thought he would deny it, but instead, he laughed a cold, cruel laugh that made my blood run cold. "You want to know? Fine. Her name is Melissa. She's young, beautiful, and successful. She's everything you're not, Amanda." His words cut like knives. "What do you mean? I'm your wife. I've given you 15 years. 15 years of what?" Richard sneered. "You're just a housewife. You don't work. You don't contribute anything. Melissa is a partner at a law firm. She's ambitious and intelligent. She's my equal." Tears streamed down my face. "I raised your children. I took care of your home. I supported your career. That's not a real contribution," Richard said coldly. "Any babysitter could do what you do. I want a divorce, Amanda. I'm done pretending to be happy." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. After 15 years of marriage, after sacrificing my own career dreams to support his, after raising his children, he was throwing me away like garbage. "We'll discuss terms," Richard said, his lawyer voice cold and businesslike. "I'll be fair. You'll get some support for the kids, of course." "Fair?" I whispered. "Yes, fair. Don't be dramatic about this. People get divorced all the time. It's very common and civilized. But there was nothing civilized about the way my heart was breaking. There was nothing fair about being discarded after giving someone 15 years of your life." Richard moved out the next day, taking only his clothes and personal items. He moved in with Melissa into her fancy downtown apartment. I was left alone in our big house with 2 confused, heartbroken children who couldn't understand why Daddy had left. 2 weeks later, Richard's divorce papers arrived. I sat at my kitchen table, reading through them with growing horror. He was asking for joint custody of the children, which seemed reasonable. But then I saw what he was offering for spousal support, $1,500 per month for only 3 years. I called the lawyer Richard had recommended, a man named James Peterson, who Richard said would help me through this process fairly. "Is this normal?" I asked Mr. Peterson, pointing to the support amount. "Oh yes, very standard," Mr. Peterson said smoothly. "Your husband is being quite generous, actually. Many men offer far less." Something felt wrong, but I didn't know anything about divorce law. I had trusted Richard for everything financial during our marriage. I had no idea what was fair or unfair. "Should I sign this?" I asked. "I would recommend it," Mr. Peterson said. "Fighting in court will be expensive and stressful. Better to settle amicably." I almost signed. My pen was literally touching the paper. But something stopped me, a small voice inside saying, "Wait, don't trust them." That night, I couldn't sleep. Something about the whole situation felt wrong. Why was Richard's recommended lawyer pushing me to sign so quickly? Why did $1,500 per month feel like such a small amount when Richard made excellent money? I got up at 2 a.m. and went to Richard's home office, which he had left mostly intact when he moved out. I started going through his files, looking for anything that might help me understand our financial situation. What I found shocked me to my core. Hidden in the back of a filing cabinet, I discovered bank statements, investment accounts, and business documents that I had never seen before. Richard had been hiding money, lots of money. Our joint accounts showed his annual salary of $150,000, which is what I thought he made. But these hidden documents showed he actually made over $400,000 per year when you included bonuses and profit sharing from his law firm. There was more. Richard owned rental properties I didn't know about. He had investments in the stock market worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. He had a secret savings account with $300,000 in it. I sat on the floor of his office, surrounded by papers, realizing the full extent of Richard's betrayal. He hadn't just cheated on me with another woman. He had been cheating me financially for years, hiding money and assets while I trusted him completely. And now he was trying to cheat me again in the divorce by offering me pennies while hiding his millions. I also found something else that made my blood boil. Emails between Richard and James Peterson, the lawyer he had recommended to me. Make sure Amanda signs quickly. One email from Richard said, "She's not smart about money. She'll trust whatever you tell her. Get her to accept the low support amount before she figures anything out." "Don't worry," Mr. Peterson had replied. "I'll handle her. She'll sign." They were working together. The lawyer I thought was helping me was actually working for Richard. They were conspiring to cheat me out of what I deserved. I sat in that office until the sun came up, feeling anger like I had never felt before. Richard thought I was stupid. He thought I was just a dumb housewife who would believe anything he told me. But he had made a terrible mistake. He had underestimated me completely. Yes, I had spent 15 years focused on home and children instead of a career. But I wasn't stupid. I had graduated top of my class in college before I married Richard. I had put my intelligence and ambition aside to support his dreams, but those qualities hadn't disappeared. They had just been sleeping. And now they were wide awake. I spent the next week carefully photographing every document I had found. I made copies of everything. I organized it all into a detailed file that showed exactly how much money Richard had been hiding. Then I did something Richard would never expect. I hired a real lawyer. Not the one he recommended, but the best divorce lawyer in the city, a fierce woman named Catherine Walsh, who was famous for destroying cheating husbands in court. Catherine Walsh's office was in a tall glass building downtown. She was in her 50s, with sharp eyes and an even sharper suit. She looked at me carefully when I walked in. "Mrs. Foster," she said, "what can I do for you?" I handed her the file of documents I had compiled. "My husband is trying to cheat me in our divorce. I need your help to stop him." Catherine spent 30 minutes reviewing my documents. Her expression changed from neutral to interested to absolutely delighted. "Oh my," she said finally, a small smile playing at her lips. "Your husband has been very naughty and very stupid." "What do you mean?" "He's hidden significant assets, which is illegal in divorce proceedings. He's colluded with a lawyer to trick you, which is deeply unethical. And he's left a paper trail that proves everything." She looked up at me with respect in her eyes. "You did excellent work gathering this evidence." "Thank you," I said. "Can you help me?" "Can I help you?" Catherine laughed. "Mrs. Foster, I'm going to destroy him. When I'm done, your husband is going to regret every lie he ever told you." Over the next 2 months, Catherine and I built our case carefully. We hired forensic accountants who traced every dollar Richard had hidden. We subpoenaed bank records. We gathered proof of Richard's affair, his lies, and his attempt to defraud me. Richard had no idea what was coming. He thought I had signed his divorce papers and everything was settled. Mr. Peterson had told him I was cooperating fully and would accept whatever terms they offered. Richard was so confident that he and Melissa started planning their wedding. They sent out save-the-date cards. They booked a venue. Melissa posted photos on social media of her engagement ring, the $5,000 ring I had found the receipt for. "Let him be confident," Catherine advised. "Arrogance makes people careless. The more confident he is, the harder he'll fall." Finally, our court date arrived. Richard was expecting a quick, simple hearing where the judge would approve our mutual agreement and finalize the divorce. He was in for the shock of his life. I dressed carefully that morning in a professional Navy suit. I looked at myself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. I looked strong, determined, ready for battle. My children were staying with my mother. "Go get him, honey," she had said, hugging me tight. "Make him pay for what he did." The courthouse was intimidating, all marble floors and high ceilings. Richard was already there when I arrived, sitting with Mr. Peterson. He was laughing about something, completely relaxed. When he saw me walk in with Catherine Walsh, his smile faltered slightly. But then Mr. Peterson whispered something to him, and Richard relaxed again. He had no idea that Mr. Peterson was about to have the worst day of his professional career. Judge Margaret Harrison entered the courtroom, and we all stood. She was an older woman with gray hair and a no-nonsense expression. She had a reputation for being tough but fair. "Please be seated," she said. "This is the divorce proceeding for Richard Foster and Amanda Foster. I understand you have a mutual agreement?" Mr. Peterson stood up smoothly. "Yes, Your Honor. My client and Mrs. Foster have reached an amicable settlement. We just need your approval to finalize it." Judge Harrison looked at me. "Mrs. Foster, is this correct? You agree to these terms?" I stood up slowly. "No, Your Honor. I do not agree to these terms." Richard's head whipped around to stare at me, his eyes wide with shock. Mr. Peterson's mouth fell open. "I see," Judge Harrison said, her interest clearly piqued. "Please explain." Catherine stood up. "Your Honor, Mrs. Foster does not agree to these terms because her husband has committed fraud. He has hidden significant assets and has colluded with Mr. Peterson to deceive Mrs. Foster about the true value of the marital estate." "That's absurd!" Richard shouted, jumping to his feet. "Your Honor, my wife is just being vindictive because I left her. There are no hidden assets." "Mr. Foster, sit down," Judge Harrison said sharply. "You'll have your turn to speak. Miss Walsh, do you have evidence of these allegations?" "Yes, Your Honor. Substantial evidence." Catherine began presenting our case, document by document. Bank statements showing Richard's real income. Property deeds showing rental properties in Richard's name only. Investment accounts I had never known about. The emails between Richard and Mr. Peterson proving their conspiracy. With each new piece of evidence, Richard's face grew paler. Mr. Peterson started sweating visibly. Finally, Judge Harrison looked at Richard. "Mr. Foster, how do you explain these documents?" Richard stood up, and I could see him trying to gather his confidence. He was a lawyer, after all. He was good at talking his way out of trouble. "Your Honor, my wife is clearly confused about financial matters. Those accounts are business-related and have nothing to do with our marital assets. She doesn't understand how money works." I felt my anger flare at his condescending tone. He was doing it again, treating me like I was stupid. "The rental properties were investments I made independently," Richard continued. "My wife never contributed to them, so they shouldn't be considered marital property." "I see," Judge Harrison said dryly. "And the emails with Mr. Peterson? How do you explain those?" "Those are taken out of context," Richard said smoothly. "Mr. Peterson was simply trying to expedite a difficult process. There was no conspiracy. Richard was so confident in his lies, so certain he could charm the judge just like he had charmed juries for years." Richard turned to look at me, and his expression was full of contempt. "Your Honor, I think it's obvious what's happening here. My wife is upset that I left her, and she's making up elaborate stories to punish me. She's always been emotional and irrational." People in the courtroom started murmuring. Some of them seemed to be believing Richard. He was, after all, a successful lawyer. He looked credible in his expensive suit, with his confident manner. "Look at her," Richard continued, gesturing at me dismissively. "She spent 15 years as a housewife. She has no education in finance, no understanding of business, no real-world experience. And now she expects this court to believe that she, with her limited intelligence, uncovered some massive conspiracy? It's laughable, Your Honor. Truly laughable." He actually laughed, and some people in the courtroom laughed with him. The sound made me feel small and humiliated, exactly what Richard wanted. "My wife is desperate," Richard said, his voice dripping with fake sympathy. "She realizes she contributed nothing to our marriage, and now she wants to take everything I worked for. But she has no proof, no real evidence, just wild accusations from a woman scorned." Mr. Peterson joined in, standing up to support Richard. "Your Honor, I must agree with my client. Mrs. Foster is clearly acting out of emotion rather than reason. The settlement we proposed was more than fair. Many women in her position would be grateful for such generous terms. Richard nodded enthusiastically. Exactly. I'm offering her $1,500 per month, which is plenty for a woman with no job and no expenses. What more does she want? Perhaps she wants what she's actually entitled to, Catherine said coldly, but Richard ignored her. This whole proceeding is a waste of the court's time, Richard continued. My wife has no case. She has no evidence that would stand up to scrutiny. She's just being a bitter, vengeful woman who can't accept that our marriage is over. The more Richard talked, the more confident he became. He was performing now, playing to the courtroom like it was a jury he needed to convince. I move that we dismiss these baseless accusations and approve the original settlement, Richard said dramatically. Let's end this farce and allow both of us to move on with our lives. Judge Harrison looked at me. Mrs. Foster, do you have anything to say in response to your husband's claims? I stood up slowly, my heart pounding so hard I thought everyone could hear it. All eyes were on me. Richard was smirking, certain he had won. Mr. Peterson looked relieved. Even some people in the courtroom looked at me with pity, like I was a foolish woman about to embarrass herself further. I looked directly at Judge Harrison and said calmly, Your Honor, I understand that my husband is very confident in his lies. He's a skilled lawyer who has spent his career convincing people of things that aren't true. He's very good at it. Your Honor, this is ridiculous. Richard started to interrupt. Mr. Foster, be quiet, Judge Harrison said sharply. Mrs. Foster is speaking. I continued. My husband thinks I'm stupid. He thinks I'm just an emotional, irrational housewife who doesn't understand the real world. He's said that to me many times over the years, and clearly he's saying it here today. Your Honor, I object to, Mr. Peterson began. You're not in a trial, Mr. Peterson. There are no objections in family court. Please continue, Mrs. Foster. Your husband mocked me throughout this entire process, I said, my voice growing stronger. He mocked me when I asked about our finances. He mocked me when I questioned the divorce terms. He mocked me in emails to his lawyer friend. And he's mocking me here today in front of Your Honor. Is there a point to this, Mrs. Foster? Judge Harrison asked, but not unkindly. Yes, Your Honor, there is. My husband is so confident in his mockery, so certain that I'm too stupid to catch him, that he made a very serious mistake. Richard's smirk faltered slightly. What are you talking about? I ignored him and spoke directly to the judge. Your Honor, my husband submitted financial disclosure forms as part of this divorce, as required by law. In those forms, he swore under oath that he had listed all of his assets and income. He swore that everything was complete and truthful. Yes, I did, Richard said confidently. And it was. Your Honor, this is just more. Your Honor, I interrupted calmly. If you would please check page 4 of my husband's financial disclosure form, you'll find something very interesting. Judge Harrison picked up Richard's financial disclosure form and flipped to page 4. Her eyebrows rose slightly. Then she started to smile. Then she actually started to laugh, a genuine, delighted laugh that filled the courtroom. Richard's face went pale. Your Honor, what's so funny? Judge Harrison composed herself, but her eyes were twinkling with amusement. Mr. Foster, on page 4 of your financial disclosure form, there's a section asking if you have any rental properties or real estate holdings other than your primary residence. Do you remember what you answered? Richard's voice was uncertain now. I answered no, because those properties aren't relevant to. You answered no, Judge Harrison interrupted. Under oath. You swore that you had no rental properties. And yet, Miss, Walsh has just presented deeds showing that you own 3 rental properties worth a combined total of $800,000. So either you lied under oath on this form, or you have a very poor memory. The courtroom was absolutely silent now. Everyone was staring at Richard, whose face had gone from pale to red. I didn't mean, Richard stammered. Judge Harrison wasn't done. She was flipping through Richard's disclosure form now, her expression growing more serious. And here on page 4, You listed your annual income as $150,000. But the tax returns Miss Walsh provided show your actual income last year was $430,000. That's quite a discrepancy, Mr. Foster. Those bonuses they're not regular income, Richard tried to explain, but he was floundering now. They're income, Judge Harrison said flatly. Income that you failed to disclose, under oath. She turned to Mr. Peterson. And you, Mr. Peterson, you reviewed these forms before they were submitted, correct? Mr. Peterson was sweating heavily now. Yes, Your Honor, but I relied on my client's representations. You relied on your client's lies, you mean, and then you colluded with your client to pressure Mrs. Foster into accepting a settlement based on those lies. The emails, Miss Walsh presented, make that very clear. Your Honor, I can explain. Mr. Peterson started desperately. I don't want to hear it, Judge Harrison said, her voice cold now. What I've seen here today is one of the most egregious examples of fraud and misconduct I've encountered in my 15 years on this bench. Judge Harrison looked at Richard with an expression of complete disgust. Mr. Foster, you're a lawyer. You know better than anyone that lying under oath is perjury. You know that hiding assets in a divorce is fraud. You know that what you've done here is not just unethical, it's criminal. Your Honor, Richard tried to speak, but his voice came out as a squeak. Be quiet, Judge Harrison snapped. You've said quite enough already. In fact, you've spent the last 20 minutes mocking your wife, calling her stupid and irrational, suggesting that she's too ignorant to understand financial matters. And all the while, you were the one who was too stupid to realize that your own disclosure forms would destroy you. I had to bite my lip to keep from smiling. This was even better than I had imagined. Your Honor, if I could just explain the circumstances, Richard pleaded. The circumstances are very clear, Mr. Foster. You committed perjury. You attempted to defraud your wife. You colluded with your attorney to create an unfair settlement. And you did it all while arrogantly assuming that your wife was too stupid to catch you. Judge Harrison shook her head. But Mrs. Foster wasn't stupid at all, was she? In fact, she was smart enough to find all your hidden assets. Smart enough to document everything carefully. Smart enough to hire an excellent attorney. And smart enough to let you keep talking while you dug yourself deeper and deeper into a hole. Here's what's going to happen, Judge Harrison said, her voice firm and final. First, I'm denying your proposed settlement entirely. It was based on fraud and will not be approved. Richard looked like he might faint. Second, I'm ordering a full forensic accounting of all marital assets. Everything will be disclosed, everything will be valued properly, and everything will be divided fairly, which means Mrs. Foster will receive significantly more than the pittance you offered her. Your Honor, please, Richard begged. Third, I'm awarding Mrs. Foster her attorney's fees. All of them. You will pay for Miss Walsh's services, Mr. Foster, since this entire expensive court proceeding was necessitated by your fraud. Catherine squeezed my hand under the table. This was going even better than we had hoped. Fourth, I'm referring this matter to the State Bar Association for investigation. Mr. Foster, you may face disciplinary action for your conduct, possibly including suspension or disbarment. Richard's face was now completely white. His career, his reputation, everything was crashing down around him. And Mr. Peterson, Judge Harrison turned to the sweating lawyer. I'm also referring your conduct to the Bar Association. Colluding with a client to defraud his spouse is a serious ethical violation. You should be ashamed of yourself. Finally, Judge Harrison said, looking at Richard with cold eyes, I'm awarding Mrs. Foster additional compensation for emotional distress caused by your fraud and your treatment of her throughout this process. The amount will be determined at our next hearing, but I can assure you it will be substantial. Your Honor, I don't have that kind of money, Richard protested. You have 3 rental properties, multiple investment accounts, and a $300,000 savings account, Judge Harrison said dryly. I think you'll manage. You might have to sell that engagement ring you bought for your girlfriend, though. What a shame. The courtroom erupted in whispers and murmurs. Some people were actually laughing at Richard now, the same people who had laughed with him earlier when he was mocking me. This hearing is adjourned. Judge Harrison said, banging her gavel. "We'll reconvene in 30 days for the next phase of proceedings. Mr. Foster, Mr. Peterson, I suggest you both retain excellent legal counsel, because you're going to need it." She stood up and left the courtroom, leaving chaos behind her. Richard sat frozen in his chair, staring at nothing. Mr. Peterson was frantically making phone calls, probably trying to find a lawyer to defend himself. People were staring and whispering and pointing. Catherine and I gathered our materials calmly and prepared to leave. As we walked past Richard's table, he suddenly grabbed my arm. "Amanda, wait," he said desperately. "We can fix this. We can work something out. You don't have to destroy me like this." I looked down at his hand on my arm, then up at his face. "Let go of me, Richard. Please, just listen." I said, "Let go." He released my arm, and I stepped back. For a moment, we just looked at each other, this man I had loved for 15 years, this man who had betrayed me in every possible way. "You called me stupid," I said quietly. "You mocked me. You thought I was too ignorant to understand what you were doing. But you were wrong, Richard. You were so very wrong." "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry. I made a terrible mistake." "Yes, you did. You made many mistakes. And now you're going to pay for every single one of them." I turned and walked away, my head held high, my steps confident. Behind me, I heard Richard starting to cry. I didn't look back. 3 months later, the divorce was finalized. After the forensic accountants finished their work, the total value of our marital assets was determined to be $2.3 million, much more than the $150,000 Richard had claimed. I received half of everything, plus additional compensation for Richard's fraud, plus my attorney's fees, plus ongoing spousal support of $7,000 per month for 10 years. In total, I walked away with over $1.5 million in ongoing support that would allow me to go back to school and restart the career I had put on hold. Richard had to sell 2 of his rental properties to pay me. His reputation was destroyed. The Bar Association suspended his law license for 2 years. Melissa broke off their engagement when she realized Richard was broke and disgraced. Mr. Peterson was also suspended and had to pay a substantial fine. His law firm fired him to distance themselves from the scandal. As for me, I bought a smaller house that was perfect for me and the kids. I enrolled in a graduate program for business management. I started rebuilding my life, but this time, on my own terms, with my own goals, and with the confidence of someone who had fought and won. My daughter Emma asked me one night, "Mom, are you happy Dad got in trouble?" I thought about it carefully. "I'm not happy that anyone got hurt, sweetie, but I'm happy that the truth came out. I'm happy that lying and cheating had consequences. And I'm happy that I was strong enough to stand up for myself." "You were really brave, Mom," Emma said, hugging me tight. "Thank you, baby. And you know what? You can be brave too. When someone treats you badly, you don't have to accept it. You can fight back. You can stand up for yourself. You can win." The best part of the whole experience wasn't the money or seeing Richard suffer. The best part was discovering my own strength. For 15 years, I had let Richard make me feel small and stupid and worthless. But I wasn't any of those things. I was smart and capable and strong. I had always been those things I had just forgotten. Richard's biggest mistake wasn't hiding his assets, or committing perjury, or mocking me in court. His biggest mistake was underestimating me. He thought I was too weak to fight back, too stupid to catch him, too beaten down to stand up for myself. He learned, in the most painful way possible, that he was wrong. And every time I remember Judge Harrison laughing when I told her to check page 4, every time I remember Richard's confident smirk turning to shocked horror, every time I remember walking out of that courtroom with my head held high, I smile. Because sometimes, the best revenge isn't about destroying someone. It's about proving them wrong. It's about showing them that you're stronger than they ever imagined. It's about winning not through cruelty, but through truth and justice. And that victory, that sweet, satisfying, hard-earned victory, it tastes absolutely delicious.